Edu out was trending last night, Jay.
Hmm.
A lot of angry Arsenal fans at not signing another midfielder. A lot of angry Arsenal fans at not getting a winger. Why are they angry, and where do you sit on this argument?
Because they wanted a winger or a midfielder. Like,
Well, I know that.
well, I haven't finished my thing. See, why are you doing all that? You just what are you mad about? I mean,
I'm
that's
not
the
mad. Just like I know that. Just like get into it. Stop deflecting.
I'm not deflecting. Arsenal fans wanted another player, and we were kind of promised one. I feel like at some point we felt like it was coming.
Mm.
They kept saying like, okay, Arsenal are still in for a winger, they're still in for a midfielder. And as the time ticked down, we didn't get one. And so I think there's a frustration. I think it's also been compounded by the injuries in midfield that we had, which ultimately were the reason why Arsenal went after Douglas Luiz. So, yeah, like I think that's why people are frustrated. But I also think like there's a section of the fan base that we're waiting on something to be really upset about because we've been winning games and they didn't think we were going to be decent this season. They didn't like the signings. And so this is a reason to be really upset. I understand the frustration because I was really, really frustrated because I just felt like we've never really addressed midfield the way that we probably should have.
Mm.
There's just, I just don't understand why we can't buy another midfielder. Like, I just don't get it, and it just feels like it's never really addressed properly. Now, I get that Arsenal bought Fabio Vieira, and they bought him for 30 million, so clearly they think that there's a really good player there. I also think there's a really good player there, but we haven't seen him play yet. So, he could actually be the key to all of this feeling a lot better. But ultimately, when you have those injuries and then you don't bring somebody in, when you feel like all this time we were being told that we're gonna be getting another player, it's frustrating. Where I can't really connect with the idea that that means that the window was a failure, and I think there's a lot of Arsenal fans that have jumped off the deep end, have gone overboard and severely overreacted, and it's like, so we if we don't get everything, then it's a failure, and I don't actually feel like that's how you should analyze a window. I really don't, because we really did address so many of our big issues. It's just a matter of like, okay, what about that one last player and what could not getting that do? But we did get some really good players, and so I think it's a good window.
Yes, you're right. It was good. Good to very good. 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
But I also get listen. There are some Edu out people. They're part of the Arteta out crew. They just want to be. They've spent 3 months not being able to moan. The first 5 games of the season have not been able to moan. They miss the attention that it gets them. So I get that. But I do think Arsenal fans should be annoyed at. I don't think you should be annoyed. I think Edu out is ridiculous. It should be Cronkies. What the hell are you doing? Because I do think you'll make top four this year, by the way. I still believe that. But as you've said, no one can foresee what's going to happen on Sunday. Who knows? One wrong twist by a player and it's 6 months out. And that goes for all teams, by the way, but we're talking
Yeah.
about Arsenal directly. And if the wrong player gets injured at the wrong time for Arsenal this year, you could end up missing out. Equally, there could be some burnout, there could be some tired legs. If you miss out on something special by a point or two,
Mhm.
you'll look back and be like, that extra bit of investment now, it is massive. You miss out on the Champions League, which is worth anywhere between 50 to 80 million pounds. For the sake of spending 40 million on deadline day, it's a bad investment choice. If you make the Champions League without it, you can look back and go, well, didn't need to spend it. But I think the risk they're running makes everything a little bit tighter and a little bit harsher. And you've got the other element where the Cronkies, via the media, have lied to you all again. The whole cooling of the interest in Tillemans. Now, what we were told initially was they've got it done. It's in the bag, everyone. But we're going to go get Rafinha and a defender sorted out. Then we're coming back. As I said, probably to you every 2 weeks on our shows and others. This doesn't seem, it didn't, it just sounded like typical club PR. And that's the
Mhm.
only thing that's annoyed me. And Arsenal fans may not care because they're on top of the league and they're in the ascendancy, but I think you should care about these things because if they lie to you in the good times, what they're going to do in the bad times. And I think they've strong. I think there was almost zero intention to buy. unless you could get a cheap deal. The lines of we couldn't find the right players is we're not willing to spend the money on the right players. In my opinion, we had Fergie do it for the Glazers for years. No value in the market. No, the Glazers wouldn't sanction the money needed to sign David Silva, to sign Sergio Aguero. They should have been Man United players, not Man City players, and we wouldn't spend the money. And that would, me and you've had this conversation on the show before. All the Arsenal fans after a good run of games last year, Kroenke doing a good job now. You know they're doing a good job if 4, 5, 6, 7 years they're consistent every summer. The squad keeps getting better. Your best players aren't sold. They're given market value standard contracts to keep them here. And even when you get an element of success, you keep spending until you're at the top, and then you spend to stay at the top when you need to. That's what the biggest clubs in the world do. Then you can say you're being run well for a club that you get for a group of fans who get charged the most amount of money for shirts. You release about 5 a year, the most amount of money for season tickets. And people think I'm trying to make Arsenal fans angry at their own club. No, I've just got an expectation of how these billionaire owners treat the working class fans who built these football clubs. And I look at the way what they've done and think you've penny pinched and you've just kind of, used PR nonsense headlines to work your way through it. A number of respected journalists who do your bidding for you, and a handful of content creators that will just, whatever Arteta says, they'll get on their knees and they'll gargle whatever it is that he puts in their mouth.
So what about having limits of spending? Like, you don't think that there's ever a limit to spending, or we should just continue to, because it's to say that they're penny pinching, I think is disingenuous,
No.
because they have spent money. So it's not penny pinching would be like not getting anything really, but they have spent money over the last 3 seasons. But we also were flagged for being close to FFP. So is there no argument there that maybe we just couldn't go over a certain amount and there had to be some sort of budget, and that we were not in the same spending situation as Manchester City or Chelsea or other teams that may not have spent as much as us over the last couple of seasons? Because we've been top spenders for the last maybe 2 summers.
Potentially, then say that. Say that we have no more money to spend. Not that we just didn't find the right players. Don't tell the fans that you've called your interest and you're going to come. Charles Watts, when he wrote that article, got that from, he got it from Arsenal Football Club. He did, because he's got connections there. Don't lie to the fans and say we've called the interest and we're coming back later to buy him. I can buy everything you say if they say that. Just say we're done for now. We've spent what we're spending,
they
and we're
said
happy
they
with the
cooled
squad.
their interest and they may come back. Most people said maybe, but maybe not.
I read that article, and that article alluded to sorting out other business and maybe coming back later on in the window. And it was never really challenged by the hardcore Arsenal fans. And then the next story was actually Arteta's not sold on his fitness issues, and it changed over the course of the summer. My point is this: come out and say we've spent what we can spend. We're very happy with this squad. We're going to head into the season full steam ahead. That's being honest with the fans. Going out on the last day of the window. And by the way, even with Douglas Luiz, I don't think he's worth 40 million with 1 year left on his deal. But you tried to get him on the final day of the season. And
because Elneny got injured.
Yes, I understand that. But Yuri Tillemans was available for 25 million for weeks. The point I'm making is you could have gone and bought another midfielder. If you'd have put the pressure on Villa and Douglas Luiz 3 weeks ago, that guy was clucking to join you yesterday. He would have pushed and pushed and pushed, and you could have forced a move through at maybe 30 million, so 10 million less. If you're willing to spend,
they didn't need him because Elneny had not been injured.
But you say they didn't need him, but at what percentage of games has Partey missed?
Most people wanted a number 8.
Okay, but I'm asking you a question about we're talking about the money, not the position. How many games? What percentage of games has Partey missed since he joined Arsenal?
He's missed a lot, but
you told me the other day. What is it? 40-odd%?
58%.
So 58%. So you need it.
He's been available for 58%.
You need. Okay, so he's missed 42% of games.
Okay.
You needed an alternative midfielder. Elneny isn't even good enough. So for nearly half your season, you'd have to rely on Elneny, who isn't good enough. I think your club should be asking, fans should be asking to invest more. And if you're willing to spend 25 million, if you'd have gone earlier for Douglas Luiz or a player of that quality, you might have been able to get him for 30 million. Now, I don't think an extra £5 million is the difference between failing FFP and passing it. That's my point. I understand where you're coming from, but I just think they're pulling the wool over your eyes.
I don't think they're pulling the wool over our eyes. I really don't. I think you've read a couple of things, and because also people that you're connected with have said we were always going to go back for Tielemans. There's been several people that are close to Arsenal that said they're not sure, maybe not. So it was never really definitive. Then we started to look at a winger, We wanted to get Pedro Neto. We didn't feel like he was worth the 50 million. That may be something that you can talk about, but
Where's the again? Where's the money that you were going to spend? You guys were going to buy a defender irrespective, right?
a what?
You were going to buy a defender irrespective of you were always going to buy a defender this summer, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So where's the Rafinha money that you're willing to spend on him?
Well, we were willing to spend the 50 million on Rafinha, but maybe not as much for Pedro Neto.
So if you were willing to spend the 50 million, then it ain't an FFP issue, is it?
Well, maybe we still are looking at other players and we want to push it and get like the targets that we actually want. I see what you're trying to say, that we should just get whatever player because we're in some
No,
sort of crisis.
I'm not saying get whatever.
Arsenal's
No,
not in a
but I don't say
crisis.
you're in a crisis. I'm not saying you should get whatever player. I don't think Pedro Neto is just some random player. The same Arsenal journalist was saying that Pedro Neto is the primary target in a wing position.
How much was he going to cost? Do you know?
I reckon you could have got him for 60 million pounds.
Well, if Arsenal weren't willing to spend 60 million,
But you were willing to spend 50 plus million on Rafinha if he said yes, and you bid 25 million for Douglas Luiz. That's the money there for Neto.
But it's not about the money being available. It's about how much they feel like he's worth. Because you talk about all the time that Manchester United get Manchester United prices because people know you guys are willing to spend whatever on whatever player.
Yeah.
That's not a good thing. You don't want people taking you for a ride in the market. So maybe your position is we'll only buy players at the price that we feel like they're worth. They didn't think Pedro Neto was worth more than whatever they were willing to spend.
And that's fine, but I think and that's fine for them to think about. I think they've potentially made a mistake. And you know how much I praise your team this year. You know, 100%. I think you're going to have a very, very good season, but I think you've got to protect yourselves against the issues. Now, I want Man United to drive the price down and pay as little as possible. But at the same time, when there's holes that need to be filled, I'd rather overspend by 20 million pounds on Anthony than not have Anthony at this moment in time. And again, with Arsenal, you are not a title-winning, Champions League winning team that can maybe, like, Liverpool haven't bought well this year. I've ranked them number 6 in the top 6 for their window, but I still think they'll come second. Arsenal are not at Liverpool's level yet, and I think they've just scrimped and scraped. And I think what's more annoyed me has been the way all summer when I went out on Twitter and was like, "Oh, do you guys actually think you'll buy people in these positions? How dare you say we won't? Yes, they will. They'll do this." And now that it hasn't happened, the mental gymnastics I'm seeing from Gooners is unbelievable. Well, you guys were all lied to. You were telling me their lies. Now you're saying they weren't lying. It's kind of weird to me. But yeah, I just don't like the way they've treated Arsenal fans. I think it's been wrong myself. But viewers, like, what do you think? Do you think the Kroenke should have spent more money this summer? Do you think they've invested enough over the last 2 or 3 years and have got a good enough squad to achieve what they want to achieve this year? I would love your views, love your thoughts. Make sure you're smashing like and share buttons for us today.